So we're sitting here with Jake Feinberg at Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas. Jake Feinberg, you've been on a path of doing journalist work for many, many years, and you're doing it independently. You no longer work on a radio station. Tell me how that works.
Well, I do work on a radio station. It's an extraterrestrial station called Power Talk 1210, so it streams worldwide, but it's not corporate. It's not syndicated. I don't have to answer to anybody. And that's kind of been the most liberating thing about being able to find my voice, is just the mere fact that I'm able to cultivate my own sponsors. And not just, fund my program, but support my family with it as well. It's 6 years in, and it has been, I can't quite describe how I got to where I am, but I think that's part of the magic of it.
Where is the work taking you?
Just a higher level of enlightenment. I'm not somebody who's going to be diving into theses or reading or doing huge amounts of laborious academic work per se. I connect with human beings. Chances are that they have been in serious life situations themselves, on the bandstand, artistically, overcoming adversity, leadership, the lineage of music. So by connecting with human beings and doing long form interviews, which is not fashionable anymore in our, sort of radio paradigm or broadcasting paradigm, I've been able to extract information so I've been able to learn a lot about history, about sociology, about cultural bias, and I'm very sharp because of it. I don't watch I watch, anything I want to watch I can stream online pretty much, but I cut my cable, cut our TV. I really don't buy into fads or anything like that. I just try to keep as grounded as possible by connecting with real peeps.
When you say connecting with real peeps, how do you really measure the depth of that connection through radio? Like you make a connection, and does it continue off air, or what is that work?
That's the thing about Jake Feinberg, is that once you get bit by the bug, I'm in your life forever. And for most, Robert Caston, who's coming to visit us, he friended me on Facebook. He started to see what I was doing. I reached out to him for an interview. And every hang, even if it's on the telephone, we're gonna have a deep hang. So we're gonna talk about some good, cool things. And sure enough, I can call him on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m, and he's coming down here to meet us to do another interview. Now he knows he's gonna be able to get some, it's gonna be nice for him, but it also speaks to the relationships that I have cultivated. I'll be doing the same thing when I go to work on the Stan Getz documentary. We're going to New York City after that. I'll be, hanging out with younger musicians that I've connected with. I've used new media as such an incredible tool to connect with humanity. That's the crux of the Jake Feinberg Show, is connecting humanity in the digital age. I'm not interviewing medical doctors, I'm interviewing musicians and artists, but it's using technology, which can be pretty quantitative, to connect people. I know for a fact that through my interviews and through my excerpts and through tagging people on Facebook, I've reconnected musicians that haven't spoken to each other in 30 or 40 years.
That's lovely.
Yeah. The testimonials are there. When John McLaughlin is giving you credence and saying, Jake, your ability to hear from the thousands of hours of listening to records, you've actually incorporated what you've been hearing from our generation of musicians into your criteria for your radio program. That's heavy, and that's only part of it. And it just becomes more dynamic, and I don't overthink stuff. That used to be my, I was on the other side for a long time. One reason I walked away from broadcasting originally was because I just was overthinking a lot. And so I thought I needed something more stable, more routine-based, and yeah, that worked for a minute.
I want to go back a little bit. You talked about people don't do hour-long shows. Mm-hmm. We don't listen to clips on social media stream that's usually over 3 minutes.
Right.
They even say, for the most part, if you don't get them in 1 minute and 17 seconds, you lose your audience. So who do you think is your audience if that's the majority of the people that they're able to kind of assess where their attention is?
Well, my age demographic is anywhere between 20 to 80 years old. We saw Carlos Santana last night. So, for instance, I mean, my base is avid music fans, the musicians themselves, the people that help build the music. And I also realize that not everybody is going to stream the interviews once they go up on my website. So what I've done is, you know, with Robert, for instance, as an example, or Clarence McDonald, who we'll see later, I will, you know, Robert and I think we did an hour, and I just took 3 or 4 pretty salient stories that I thought were cool, and I put them in print. I transcribed them on my iPhone with my thumbs in my iPhone. And then, you know, so if he's talking about Marvin Gaye making the notes round, you read that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Talking about bass players needing to make the notes round. That's a concept for younger cats that's very important to understand. It's kind of getting lost with in today's new paradigm, which is a lot about monster facility, monster chops, and less about the feel. And you put up, so I'll take that, I'll transcribe that excerpt, I'll find a good picture of Marvin Gaye, and I'll put that up on Facebook. I have 3,000 followers, 5,000 friends. They're all connected. So I put up that excerpt. If it resonates, as you know, that thing will be bouncing all over the place. And I've tried to do it. So, I mean, I'm connecting a lot. I'm now all of a sudden, my tentacles are in all musics. I'm from the Duke Ellington School. I don't want to be segregated or marginalized just to jazz or to rock. It's all music. And so I've grown. And most of the people that I'm connected with are from a different generation than me. They're from the baby boomer generation.
Talk about how you're able to connect with that generation. What's
That's a
that
great
link?
question. I mean, I think that's one reason. I have an old soul. I've always been very comfortable talking to people older than me and younger than me, and getting to them to asking them questions that I don't even necessarily write up in advance. They just sort of come at it from a gut, visceral level. And you can back it up with some knowledge, but once you connect with somebody and then, 25, 30 minutes into an interview, they're like, I don't even know what I've just said. I mean, that's the crowning achievement for me, is when most of these guys are geniuses, truly brilliant people. And most of them are very articulate, even though they don't normally speak verbally. They express themselves through their instrument. But when you get somebody on a conversation that you've never met before, or that you don't know, and you get them to talk about things that they haven't thought about, or they haven't thought about in years, or they've actually never talked about, and they hang up the phone and they say, I don't know what the fuck I just said, but I had a ball.
Who stands out in your mind as someone in a recent interview where you just know, like, wow, they went to a place that they didn't expect, and you both learned something?
And that's the other thing I want to say. The sound engineer for the Grateful Dead, Dan Healy. I mean, I've tried to get to the remaining members of the Grateful Dead. I've gotten to one, but I was connected through a beautiful cat friend of mine to Dan Healy, their sound man, and so this guy was the kind of a conduit. And Healy's a brilliant guy, and what's great is that we've connected. So I called him up the first time, and he was a little bit squeamish, I mean, my contact gave me his number, and he goes, you're going to have to work through his wife first, and then, Dan, but they're ready for that. He's agreed to do the interview. And I got him on the phone, and he was like, Jake, I don't mind doing an interview with you. Man, your resume is incredible. You've interviewed a lot of people. And we set up the first interview, and I try to approach from the point of view of, even though he's known as the sound engineer for the Grateful Dead, he's also truly a musician first and foremost. Most people don't know that about him. So one of the keys to the Jake Feinberg Show is focusing on that person's career, not what they're most well known for, because like we've talked about, People tune that out. That's what they're always asked about.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to talk to them about what their career, things that they have never really been asked about or focused on, and I have this very non-linear way of doing it. So we did our first hour-long interview, and then we did our second interview, and this week we're going to do our third interview. And he recognizes my earnestness, my journey, the fact that I am spiritually feeding myself, but he's not doing it for charity. He's doing it because he cannot believe the information that I'm extracting from him and then putting it up on new media. He likes people that stir the pot. He likes people that are not doing the same old pedestrian stuff. So, he just, every time we write, he goes, Jake, we'll do it again. And he wants to give it a few weeks each time, but I've won over his wife. She's like, Jacob, just call back next week. He'll do another interview with you. And that happens with all the guys, all of them.
Why do you think it's you? I mean, it could be so many people. And you speak about the quality of being able to get open with them, but what makes Jake special that you have that ability to do that and connect with people who don't look like yourself or have a lifestyle like yourself? How do you do that?
Point of view. Just my honestly always, I don't know if underdog is the right word, but I remember Papa Mali, a great guitar player, he told me, he goes, Jake, you have this ability to, see a picture, and everybody else, we all see the picture, and everybody thinks they see what's in the picture, and you're able to see that thing, there's something still there. There's more there than we can see. So there's an ability for me, intrinsically, whether it's intuition, some sort of intrinsic quality, to be able to go out on a limb and go right at most of these people as human beings.
Is this?
And I think, what I'm saying is that it's not one of these things in the normal corporate paradigm of broadcasting where not everybody's like this, but where you're trying to get that sound bite, okay, that is everyone's going to hang on for 30-40 seconds, okay? I'm not looking for the gotcha thing. I'm looking for something where I might ask a question with 3 subset questions in it. And most of the guys are like, well, that's a few different things, but I'll try to answer that. And they don't reject it. They take it on. And it leads into this weave of conversation. It's nothing structured. So the point is that they walk away with an experience that they've never had before in anything. I mean, and it's at a point now where I'm winning respect from writers of Rolling Stone. Now, I'm doing interviews with them now. I'm interviewing writers of Rolling. Now, good writers are great. I'm not a great writer. But these guys are writing. But they enjoy coming on the program. I think it's just the ability to ask good questions. And that is just a natural gift.
Got it. So let me ask you something. Yeah. It might be perceived as this is Jake's cathartic journey of his spiritual
sacred journey,
awakening.
Yeah.
However,
right.
We want to see it, but it's about you. How do you measure the impact, if you're able, of what that actually means to tap into a story? Some may say it's just talk, but what are you doing? What does this do for the world, for humanity as a whole? Or is it just side takeaway, building relationships? It's
a great question. I mean, it's definitely about, I'm 39. I'll be 40 in March. I've been on this I've been just sort of in the woods with a machete, chopping my way out of the darkness.
Is it sharp? The machete?
It has to be.
So you're getting through it.
I'm going towards the light. Mm-hmm. Okay. But this is more, and this is about, we have reached a superhuman status in our society. We saw Carlos Santana last night, and bless him, he's 70 years old, and he's rocking, and he's earned it. But we've put these human beings on pedestals. We've made them into superhumans. Sports, as politicians, and that's part of my job is the demystification of the superhuman. we are all human beings. So, you know, when a drummer who I'm not.
Hold on. The demystification of human beings. We're all human beings.
The demystifying of the superhuman. The way we glorify people in pop culture.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
So then we're all human beings.
Right, and then
but there's not equality for all human beings.
There isn't. But that's not that's not my cross to bear.
Okay.
Okay? What I want to do is, we'll see it with Robert today or Clarence. It doesn't matter. We're all. I think that's my goal is that we're all one human race. For me, that's been my discovery. So when I take a guy a drummer who I won't mention, but this is a guy who was so. I mean, I was able and this was somebody who came on my show, and we had a cosmic interview. He's not a big talker, but eventually we got into this groove, and I actually asked him. I said, "Can you talk about losing everything because of your addictions?" This guy went from the ultimate session drummer, and he was, I mean, to the point where in the sessions he was there, and he was strung out and unconscious at his drum kit. They'd wake him up, he'd play the session, and he was just a junkie. And he lost everything. He literally he left, he had to leave New York, he got separated from his kids. And you know what? He got sober. He lives in Phoenix now. I hope one day to meet him in person. But the point is, now he's the drummer for James Taylor and Eric Clapton and Chick Corea. And it's not because I'm saying he's playing with big people. It's the point is that he told this story much more articulately than I just did on live radio. I transcribed that story and I put it up for people, regular people, just not famous musicians or anyone. And that thing is a reinforcer to everybody that we are all at the bottom of the pit at one time or the other. And it's how you respond to it. Can you look towards the light? There's only two things you can do. You can look towards the light or the dark. So the people that I'm connected, now I'm talking mainly about Facebook here. You know, clearly I'm not a syndicated radio host or anything like that. But when you put the story up by that drummer about how he almost did lose everything, and how he overcame it, you got to believe that there are several dozen, if not hundreds or thousands of people that are dealing with their own loss and adversity. And they say, if that cat, God, I had no idea he was that low. I didn't know he reached that point. I didn't know that cat had a tumor the size of a golf ball in his head, and when they removed it, he forgot how to play the guitar. I mean, the stories that I have amassed most of it is completely, not all of it, a lot of it is new history. So it's very inspiring for people to learn new stuff. Sometimes it surprises people, but I also think it's really cool because I'm friends with that musician who I just talked about on Facebook, the drummer, and he's never told me, take that shit down. What are you doing? They're not afraid. They're not afraid to show the human quality. That we're all just human beings.
That takes a lot of courage.
A lot. It takes courage to ask the question. It takes courage to elicit, to express. I mean, I'm just thinking about one thing here. That was sort of one of those crowning moments where it was like, wow, that is a powerful story about a major crisis that is affecting a huge segment of our world population, which is addiction. Mm-hmm. It's still going on. So is it relevant to today? Yes. Immigration. I've interviewed so many cats from, all the master musicians from India. Ayrton Moreira. And, Ayrton's talking about coming to New York, trying to play the Brazilian clubs when he came here. He spoke some Spanish. And they said, yeah, you can sit on the side of the stage and play your shaker, but you can't come on the stage with us. His own brothers would not let him play with him. Do you know Ayrton?
No.
Okay. Master percussionist and drummer from Brazil. This is in the early 70s. You know who adopted him and took him in? People like Miles, the jazzers. Mm-hmm. Okay, the jazzers. He was taking off tubes from the back of refrigerators and making these whistles, or he had cuicas and all these crazy, and his own brothers would not let him play on the bandstand with them in the Puerto Rico in the salsa clubs. But the jazzers loved him, and that's where he got his start. That's America. These stories are powerful. That to me is one of the greatest stories in the world. To know that these jazzers took in a cat from Brazil when his own people rejected him in this country. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So when you talk about,
and I am interested in that. That's if you want to know the truth. For some reason, that to me is that's what I get off on. Is different. I told you that before. It's just as different and as weird and as funky as possible. And so that I've gone into the merry pranksters, the guys who were basically setting up 2 Kool-Aid jugs at these trip festivals to, for people to, to trip out and to have the acid tests. Like, I'm deep into that. I'm deep into African jazz. I'm deep into the international musical community. But I'm not really talking to them about like super deep theory. I'm talking to them about their connections and how they met people and their experiences and people's ability to let them stand. Hey, come up on the bandstand. Come play with us. I mean, the breaks, the opportunities. Because either it'll remind older cats who might be getting a little curmudgeon-y to keep their hearts open. And it will also give younger cats who might have had some rough experiences the inspiration to say, I'm going to keep going because that story really got me off. And then some stories just fall flat.
When you talk about everybody's been at the bottom of the barrel at some point.
Bottom of the pit.
Bottom of the pit. Or not. Maybe they haven't got there. Talk about the difference of how people, depending on who you are, can get out of that pit. And what you've learned from the type of artists you've interviewed.
It's another great question. Next Saturday, a week ago, so we saw Santana last night, and next Saturday I'm going to go see Pat Martino. And Pat, in the 70s, he was my first guest, my first musician guest, about 3 months into my show. I said, who's accessible? He had his website. I contacted, he reached out personally. He said, I'd love to come on your show. And we did this amazing interview. We've done 5 since then. I met him in person at his brownstone in Philadelphia. Pat, the short story is, he was arguably the greatest jazz guitarist in the world in the 70s. And he was having these horrible migraine headaches. And at the time, our medical field, psychological field, at that time, they put people in, he was institutionalized. They thought he was depressed. They thought he had psychological issues. Okay. They gave him shock therapy. And he went to the West Coast, and he was still playing his butt off, but he was really in pain. And it got so bad at one point that he finally went in to get a CT scan, brain scan, and they found a tumor the size of a pear in his brain. And when they removed the tumor and he opened his eyes, it was 1980, he's looking up, and there are these people that are standing over him. He didn't recognize who they were. It was his mom and dad. And on top of that, he had completely lost the ability to play the guitar. So he went from being, at the top, okay, to